Happy New Year! Happy 2019 to everyone. Hope you guys had a fun, safe night last night. But hey, it's Bobby Hughes here, and in this video I'm going to show you guys, we're going to talk a little bit about an introduction to my F350 project. So I'm probably going to do a couple of these videos, one for each category of rebuilding or repairs, because if we go over everything we're going to do on the entire truck in one video, it would be really long, and that wouldn't be fun. So what I'm going to do is break it up, and before we start on a video series on what we're working on or something like that, I'll do an introduction video that kind of sums everything up that we're going to do in that section. So in this video, we're going to talk about the suspension, kind of the undercarriage, stuff like that. That's going to be our first main project that we work on. I've already done some work to the truck, and we'll talk about those in each individual category. But for now, we're going to cover, like I said, just the suspension and the undercarriage. We're going to talk about all the different things that we're going to do, and also look at the current condition of what's going on with my suspension and things like that. So this video would probably be the same. My truck is a 1995 F350 dually, two-wheel drive. I did find I mentioned it in my previous video, in my I'm Back video, that there wasn't a lot of information on YouTube about my truck, and which I found weird because these OBS trucks are becoming more and more popular, and so there just wasn't a lot of information. Most of the information that I found suspension related was for the newer models, 1999 I think, or newer, 1997 or newer maybe. And so this is going to fall under a wider range of earlier trucks up to, I think, a 96 or 97. But it'll also work for F250s, F350s. Anything that's two-wheel drive is going to be exactly the same for the most part. And so we're going to get underneath the truck, and I'm going to start in the front and show you guys what I've already done, some things that are wrong. And we're going to do a undercarriage inspection, and I'll show you what the plans are and what kind of videos you can be expecting to come up in the future on this truck. All right, so underneath the front end of the truck, the first thing I want you guys to do is ignore any oil leaks that you see. This truck has some not super bad oil leak, but is an oil leak somewhere, and it drives me bonkers. I've already changed like 3 or 4 things trying to solve the oil leak, and I think all 3 things were leaking as well. But nevertheless, we have not corrected the oil leak yet, and we'll address that in another video. But so looking underneath the front end of the truck here, I'm going to try to do this. I wish I had a camera guy. So right here is your basically your tie rod ends. So that's your outer tie rod, and then this is kind of your inner rod, but it's not called a tie rod. Connects to the pitman arm. I can't think of the name of it right now, but anyway, it's like a big tie rod. Your pitman arm connects to it over here. Let's see if I can get that for you. Where's my hand? Where's my hand? Right there. Okay, there's your pitman arm right up in here. And that connects to your steering. Then your pitman arm connects to this big, I'm going to call it a tie rod, even though it's not a tie rod. Okay, and sorry that I can't think of the name of that, but anyway, it's essentially a big tie rod. Maybe a control arm, I can't remember. But anyway, so it connects to that, and then that arm runs all the way over and connects to your outer tie rod on your passenger side, and it connects with a shackle. So that's your tie rods, and then you've got your driver's side. This one connects into this one, the one we just came from, and then goes back to that outer tie rod and shackle. Okay, so we're going to do a video on, I don't know that my tie rod ends are bad. They look pretty good, but none of my tie rods, like one out of, I guess just the one over there is not serviceable. And when I say it's not serviceable, it means there's no grease fitting, and it was really loose. So that one may be bad, and so we may replace that one, but I don't know that we'll replace all of them. But we are going to take the whole system apart and clean it and paint everything. And then if you look right here, there's a bracket that hooks to the arm itself. And then up in here, you can barely see that shock right there. That is a steering, it's not a stabilizer, it's a dampener, steering dampener. But essentially it's a steering stabilizer, which just helps with, you know, kind of the sway in the steering wheel, the extra play in the steering wheel. All right, so we'll do a video on the tie rods and all of that part, the actual kind of steering system, coming up. Additionally, if you look right here at this big thing that comes around, this is your front sway bar. And so your front sway bar has two main bushings, which are these right here, and they're pretty good sized bushings. And if you look closely at those, they're not in horrible condition, but they're not in great condition either. They're starting to get cracked, and this rubber gets really hard over time, and so it makes for rough, hard shakes and stuff like that. So we're going to replace both of these bushings. There's two of them in the front here. We're going to replace both of those, and we'll also clean and paint this sway bar, front sway bar. And then back here, right there, it's going to be hard to see. Let's see if I can get a better look. Yeah, right there. So this is the link that connects the sway bar to the actual steering system. So we will be taking those off and replacing those bushings as well. There's bushings in the bottom that connect the sway bar to the link, and then sway bar or bushings in the top that connect it to the steering system itself. Okay, so that's something else we're going to do up front here. While we're under here, I don't know if you can see them or not, but right there, there's one on either side. Those are your, basically your traction bars, and your front traction bars. And there are two big bushings, one on either side, that connect the steering system to the frame, okay? And so we're going to replace those bushings. We are also going to be replacing this has the scissor axles in it, which aren't very awesome. They're not as good as a straight axle, some might say. But anyway, right here, each axle has a bushing as well. So we're going to replace those bushings. So we'll do a video on that. And then while we're under here, let's look at the back side of the wheels. Adjust my light there a little bit. So what you're looking at right here is the backer plate, or the back plate behind the rotor. And so there, you can see they're pretty rusted up, pretty grummy. All of this is pretty rusted up and grummy. So we're going to pressure wash all that, clean all of that good stuff, and get that cleaned up. Now while we're under here, I also want to point out that right there is my lower driver's side ball joint. Okay, now each side of this truck has two. You have an upper and a lower. And I'm pretty sure that lower ball joint is bad. I've got some shake in that wheel, and in the ball joint video, I'll show you how to test to see if you've got a bad ball joint. But we're going to do a video on replacing all four ball joints, upper and lower, on the front of the truck. Additionally, while we're under here, you've got a good view of the spring. The springs have already been changed out, but they're really, really simple. I've replaced the springs and the shocks, and I've already done the front brakes on this truck. But to get back in and replace wheel bearings and seals and to show you guys how to do all of that, I will do a video on how to do the front brakes, the rotors and all that stuff. And then I may even pull the spring off and show you how to do the spring. But either way, they're really easy to do, the springs and the shocks. And I think that is it for underneath the front. Also, now before we move to the back and I show you guys everything in the back, I want to point out the wheels. These are the original aluminum wheels that came with this truck. And believe it or not, I've had a lot of people offer to purchase the wheels off this truck. I've actually had a lot of people offer to buy this truck. But I want to show you guys kind of up close here. See the grime and just corrosion and stuff on these wheels. These are in really rough shape. You can see right in here, the lighting is kind of bad back in here, but I mean, they're just really corroded up and flaky looking. And then there's a lot of road grime and stuff that gets built up and lodged in here. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to clean up these factory wheels and make them look good again. So I started on the front ones. Not done with them yet, just because I had to get this thing back together. But compared to the back, now they're kind of spotty because I've not wiped them off and it was raining. But compared to the back, I'd say that's much better, right? So we've still got a little bit of buildup and stuff, and that's what I was talking about. I didn't have time to get it all out. But compared to what they did look like, these things look amazing. I mean, I can actually see my reflection in them. Compared to the other ones. But I'm going to show you guys, it's not quick and easy, but I'm going to show you guys how to restore these wheels from home. And it'll work with any factory aluminum wheel, the process wheel. These are going to be kind of a pain because the dually wheels are so much more work, but you could use the same process on any factory aluminum wheels. All right, now for the, we're going to talk about the outer part before we climb underneath the truck. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to remove the wheels, and we're going to be, when we do the rear end, we're going to be replacing, we're going to be removing the wheels, pulling the drums, pulling the brakes, all the hardware inside the brake system. We're going to replace all of that, and then we're going to pull the axles. Okay, so these trucks have floating rear axles, 250s and 350s, dually or not, they have rear floating axles, which means that you don't have to pull the diff cover and you don't have to pull links or anything like that in order to get the axles out. The reason why we're going to do that is we're going to drain all the fluid out of the system. We're going to go ahead and pull the differential cover, the rear diff cover, clean all that up, do a good inspection, make sure that our gears are still in good shape, and then we're going to replace the wheel bearings and seals on the back. Okay, and so I'm going to be showing you guys how to do that, and then we're going to top it off with fresh fluid. Now, additionally, for suspension back here, and I'll show you a better shot from underneath the truck, but there's a shock right there, okay, rear shock. We're going to be replacing rear shocks. Now, the leaf springs in this truck, I don't feel like are bad. They're not damaged. They don't appear to be damaged. And typically, leaf springs don't have to be replaced unless they get warped or unless they break. But there are good maintenance things that you can do. And in the video series, what we're going to do is we're going to be replacing the bushings that are inside the shackle or inside the leaf springs. So in the front, we have one. This is your front bushing. And then in the back, you have two. You have a, man, the lighting. It's kind of cloudy today. Let me see if I can get under here and get it to focus. Yeah, that sort of works. In the back, you've got your rear bushing, and then you have your shackle bushing. Okay, so there's actually two bushings back here. And then on top of that, you also have on these trucks what's called a helper spring, which is this top spring here that's kind of curved up. It curves up in the front and back. And then you have two bushings here these are actually insulators. So these are your helper spring insulators. You can see my helper springs have been working hardcore. Now, part of that is because of a load. Part of it is because the shocks are worn out and the truck is not sitting like it should be. And part of it is due to what's called axle wrap. All right, so what happens is when you have a high power or moderately powered vehicle, such as a diesel truck or a dually, these trucks have kind of crappy horsepower, but they have a lot of torque. And so when you hit the gas and the tire starts to move forward this way, the axle wants to move backwards this way, right? So think of a seesaw. If the axle wants to twist this way, right, what would the suspension want to do? The suspension would want to wrap, right? So that's called leaf spring wrapping or axle wrapping. And so what's happening is my leaf spring is wrapping up and it's rubbing that insulator raw. That's why that insulator is worn like that. So to combat that, everybody thinks they're for looks, but they serve a purpose. To combat that, we're going to do a video series on building traction bars, rear traction bars. I'm going to show you guys how to make them, how to install them, and that will correct that problem. Like I said, everybody thinks that they are just for looks or whatever, or oh, you've got a two-wheel drive truck, you're not doing anything crazy off-roading, you're not drag racing with it, you don't need traction bars. Well, traction bars serve more than just the purpose of for drag racing and so on and so forth. And in this case, it really prolongs the life of the leaf spring and also all the components, so the bushings and everything else. So anyway, yeah, we'll be doing that. So let's climb under the truck now. Okay, now we're up underneath the rear end of the truck. And first thing I want to point out is, I wish I could zoom out further. So just like in the front, we have a rear sway bar, which is what this is right here, okay? And it goes up over the pumpkin, back down, and then continues around. And it dies on both sides connected to what's called these end links, okay? Those end links connect to the frame with bushings, and then they come down and they have an end like a shock would. And you can see those bushings there are completely gone. I mean, horrible. So we're going to be replacing and rebuilding the entire rear sway system. Additionally, you have a bracket, right? This bracket this is the front side of the bracket. This is the bushing right here, and then this is the strap around it, and then there's a base bracket, and then there's a U-bolt that wraps around the axle, and that's what holds all of that in. Well, if you notice, there's not one over here. There's the remnants of a bushing, but no bracket. So if you're following me on Instagram, you'll see that the other day I went to the Ford graveyard and scored one of these brackets, which are apparently the holy grail of rear suspension parts. But I did find one, and we're going to install that. Here's a good look at the shocks. These shocks are probably the factory shocks, and that's probably why the truck rides so low right now. They're just worn out. The truck has 200,000 miles on it, so it's time for a lot of upgrades and just regular maintenance. This is the front side of the rear diff. There's where your drive shaft connects. So we're not going to be doing much to it other than replacing the gasket and fixing this plug here, because we've got a little bit of a leak. So we're going to be changing out all of that fluid and all that good stuff. Once again, we'll be doing the sway bar bushings, all new bushings on the sway bar. We'll be replacing that bracket. We'll be building the traction. We'll be doing the traction bars. We'll be doing the leaf spring maintenance, and then all of the rear brakes, wheel bearings, and all of that good stuff. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for back here. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it for the introduction or the walk around on the F350 and what we're going to be getting into as far as the suspension and brakes and all that stuff goes. One other thing we may be doing is, while we've got all the brakes apart, when we do the back brakes, we're going to replace the wheel cylinders and all the hardware. When I did the brakes in the front, the calipers seemed fine in the front, but we may do some cleaning and painting just as a rust preventative. I'm not so concerned about having flashy calipers and stuff like that, but I would like to prevent rust and prevent issues. And while we're doing that, we're going to do a really good inspection on the brake lines and the hoses and all that stuff, make sure all that's good. And then we will be doing a full brake system clean out. So what I'll do is I'll top off the master cylinder with fresh fluid, and I'll bleed the brakes completely through and make sure that there's good fresh fluid in the brake system. So brake fluid, if you didn't know, is it absorbs moisture from the air. So it absorbs moisture from humidity. So if you have brake fluid, you know, I mean, how often do you top off brake fluid in your vehicle? Not very often, unless you have a leak, I guess, right? So, but what happens is over time you get water, because the chemical makeup of the brake fluid, it wants to absorb moisture from everything. So it absorbs moisture from the truck, it absorbs moisture from the air, it absorbs moisture from a lot of different places. And so naturally your brake system is sealed up to prevent that, but over time it can still happen. So a brake system flush is a good thing because it helps prevent rust and air pockets from within your braking system. So if you're having braking problems and you replace all your brakes and you're still having problems and you replace your master cylinder, then eventually your system's going to be cleaned out. But it may be something as simple as just flushing the brake system out. So we're going to be doing that on this truck as well. My goal for this truck is not to have like some super show truck. I'm not going to get it out of this truck. But for the make, model, and the type of truck that this is, it has relatively low miles on it. 200,000 miles is pretty low for a 1995 7.3. These trucks, when they're taken care of, I mean, it's not uncommon for them to go 500,000 to 750,000 miles with no problems, or with no major problems. So what we're trying to do is get the truck looking decent, but also very, very dependable. Okay, so I didn't talk about it in a previous video, but back in April, if you guys were already following my Gunsmith Instagram, back in April, my 2008 F350 that I had, my main truck, got stolen. We recovered it, but it was totaled out. The insurance company totaled it out, and I decided then not to get a new truck. I had this truck already, I mean, it was a pretty good truck, and so I decided to drive it. So what I'm trying to do is make a nice, safe, kind of semi-restored vehicle, because these trucks are so cool, and they are, you know, becoming more and more rare, and the value of these trucks keeps going up. So if I can restore the basic stuff, such as suspension, brakes, maintenance on the engine, you know, fix the interior, fix the body, you know, make corrections, do things like replace the lighting and the, you know, make the front look really good and things like that, then I could get more value out of the truck if I ever decided to sell it, and it just makes it more dependable. So anyway, that's kind of the what I'm going for in this rebuild is dependability. I want it to look good. I don't want it to look like I'm driving some beater around. My wife already makes fun of it, so I want it to look good, and so that's what I'm really going for. So I hope this video, maybe something in this video you guys saw, you think, man, I need to do that to my vehicle. I need to do that to my OBS truck. If so, then keep a watch out. Go ahead and subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and keep a lookout for these videos coming up. Today's January 1st, and as soon as my parts get here for the rear, we're going to break into that rear suspension and braking system, and so those videos are coming up very soon. We're going to handle the rear first, then move to the front, and then we'll just continue on from there. Now in the meantime, I'm also working on a few other small projects, and so you may see a couple of videos pop up here and there on other things, but the main first series is going to be the rear suspension and braking, and then moving to the front suspension and braking. So anyway, guys, like I said, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you found this video helpful and you're looking forward to the new videos, leave me a comment below and tell me if there's anything specifically that you, maybe I didn't talk about it, but you want to make sure that I cover it so that you can see how to do it on your vehicle. Leave it in the comments below, and then don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you got some value out of this. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you're following the gun stuff. It's at East10 TENN Gunsmith, or you can follow this project at Motown MOTOWN OBS, and both of those accounts are on Instagram. I upload pictures regularly to both of those. There's also links up in the header up here on my main channel homepage, and you can just click on those and it'll take you right to it as well. So anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Until next time, get out there, shoot some guns, be safe, and most importantly, have fun. See you guys later.